Well, I want to start out this morning by framing the scene. We are back in Luke. This is the 30th sermon on Luke, by the way. Moving along. We'll have more sermons in Luke than we did in Romans. So it's exciting. I want to frame in the scene. So what has just happened? Luke has shown us Jesus calming a storm, right? What does that tell us about Jesus? He controls all of creation, the seen realm, all things visible. And then we saw him confronting a legion of demons and being run out of Gentile territory for upsetting the local pig industry. And what does that tell us? He has authority over the unseen realm too, all things invisible. He's the king. He's come to undo the curse. He's come to destroy the works of the devil. He's come to remake the heavens and the earth so they no longer dare reach out to harm us. So what's left? Suffering and death. That's what's left. And that's the story that we're in today. So here's Jesus. He's just crossed the sea. He's calmed the storm on the way. He's cast out a ton of demons. He's been asked to leave, so he gets back in the boat. He crosses the lake again. And what does he find on the other side? Another crowd, another set of needs, another press of desperate people. Ministry can feel like that. You barely finish one crisis and another one's waiting at the door, but that's not just ministry, right? It's life. Some of you moms live that life every day. You got one kid crying, another coughing, another tugging on the sleeve. And then the next day it's the other kid coughing, and then it just moves on down the line and sort of cycles around. You feel it in your business or in your job, one phone call after another, one fire after another. That's just life. And that's the world that Jesus steps into here. It's a life of relentless need. And one of the remarkable things about that is that Jesus never rolls his eyes at it. He never groans, he never sighs and says, "Not again." He just steps in with compassion again and again, and so that's where we pick it up. Today we have two stories that are intertwined. They're mixed together, and they're mixed together with a purpose. They're woven together in a way that you can't separate them. So in that story, we have two people, two main characters. The first one is a man named Jairus. Jairus is a synagogue ruler. He's a respected man. He's a spiritual leader in the community. You need to think elder, pastor, a man with spiritual authority. He's probably pretty wealthy, not poor. He's not anonymous. But today, in this story, none of that matters for him because today, he's just a dad. He's a father with a dying little girl. So when we first see him, we're going to see him running through the crowd and falling at Jesus' feet and begging for Jesus to come to his house. That's Jairus. On the other hand, we have a woman who is anonymous. She's unnamed. And she's been bleeding for 12 years. She is physically weak. She is socially ostracized. She is spiritually unclean. She is poor. She has spent all her money on doctors, and she's gotten worse. She is broke, alone, and desperate. On the surface, these two people couldn't be any more different. Jairus is a public leader, respected. This woman is hidden, ashamed. Jairus is going to come pleading loudly in front of a crowd. The woman's going to come sneaking in quietly behind Jesus' back. But Luke binds their stories together because at the core, they're the same. They're both desperate. They both need Jesus, and they both find him faithful. And the theme that ties it all together is that desperation that drives us to faith. They're desperate, and so they come to Jesus. And what they find is that Jesus doesn't shame them. Instead, he restores them, he cleanses the dirty, he dignifies the forgotten, and he even raises the dead. And all along the way, what he insists is, do not fear, only believe. So it's a story about faith and fear. The woman reaches out in faith, and she's healed. Jairus hears the worst thing a father could ever hear. Jesus looks him in the eye and says, don't fear, only believe. And the reality is most of us in the room are somewhere in these stories. Some of you are like the woman who's been bleeding in secret through shame, addiction, trauma, sin. And that makes you afraid to step into the light. You wonder if Jesus will turn away if you really knew the whole story. If that's how you feel or are tempted to feel, the story's for you. And some of you are like Jairus. You're watching someone you love suffer or decline, and you don't know if God's going to show up in time. You've prayed, you've pleaded, things only seem to be getting worse. And then all of us are like the little girl in the story. Because sooner or later, unless Jesus comes first, we're going to die. And that's not just being dramatic, that's just reality, right? We can't stop it. We can't stop death from hurting the people that we love. We need someone stronger than death to take us by the hand and say, arise. So the story's for all of us. Now, over the past couple weeks, we've all been confronted with the horror of death in ways none of us expected, right? Every one of us has. I went to 2 funerals in the past week. Not deaths of people that were particularly close to me, but that hit people who were close to me, that hurt people close to me. We've all had to face and deal with, on one level or another, the death of Charlie Kirk. Told the men at Taking Ground this past week, it's something that I've taken personally. Not because Charlie's death was personal, I didn't know him, but because it's more than that, it's symbolic. Charlie was just a Christian family man. Nothing like the monster that he's been painted to be. And so his death is symbolic. I'm Charlie, we're Charlie. His fatherless children strikes home. If you're a father, this past week and a half, you've been confronted with what it means to leave your kids behind, what it might mean, what it might look like. And if you're a parent, we've also had moments with our kids where we've been afraid we might lose them. I have 8 kids. I could go through and talk about scary moments, not with all of them, but with quite a few of them. About a year ago, Geneva got pneumonia and had to be admitted to the hospital. Some of you may remember that. Some of you don't. We weren't worried at first. Right? Pneumonia is a normal thing. It happens to kids. Sometimes you need to go to the hospital and just, get some strong antibiotics and be sure that you're breathing okay and then get sent home. Not too big of a deal. Been through that sort of thing before, so we knew not to make too big of a deal of it, or we thought not to make too big of a deal of it. Bruce seemed routine. But as she was in the hospital, she kept declining and getting worse, and the doctors began to run test after test, and we ran from blood work to spinal taps and scans, and they feared meningitis, and they started mentioning worst-case scenarios to us. And there's nothing worse for a mom and a dad to see your baby girl in a hospital bed, sick and pale, and no, there's nothing that you can do. You're helpless. You can't negotiate with the fever. You can't fight it with your fists. All you can do is pray. And that's where we meet Jairus in this story, this dad. Now, with Geneva, we just found out that she was having a reaction to an antibiotic that she had, right? We ran through all the big, scary things and then got the idea that maybe it was one of the antibiotics causing an allergic reaction. And it was. And the minute that we figured that out, she perked up. It was like night and day, like almost instant. It was relief for all of us. But until that moment, it was just fear that was escalating. And that's why this story matters, because we've all been in that waiting room. We've all been in that place between sickness and healing, between life and death, between fear and faith, and we'll be there again. It doesn't change. What we need to see is how Jesus steps into that space. And so we're going to go through this story one scene at a time, and as we go, I want you to ask yourself, who am I? Where am I in this story? Am I the one bleeding in shame? Am I the one begging for a miracle? Am I the one staring down death? We'll start in Luke chapter 8, verse 40. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting on him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue, and falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter about 12 years of age, and she was dying. Okay, again, Jairus is not a nobody. He's a man of standing. He's a synagogue ruler. He has a reputation. He has authority. He's a spiritual leader. He's a guy people turn to for counsel. He's an elder, a pastor. He's a man with answers. And none of that now matters, right? Because he's standing next to a bed where his little girl is gasping for breath. None of it matters when the doctors shrug their shoulders and say they don't know what to do and they don't know how to help. He's not a ruler of a synagogue here. He's a dad. A desperate dad with the daughter he loves and no power to save her. And so Luke tells us that Jairus comes and falls at Jesus' feet, which is not something that synagogue rulers do. They don't fall at people's feet. They don't throw themselves on the ground. They don't usually side with Jesus, right? The lines are pretty drawn at this point. There's the leaders, the synagogue rulers, the Pharisees, the scribes, right? And there's Jesus. The establishment suspicious of Jesus. For Jairus to come and to kneel in front of Jesus, in front of a crowd, is to risk his career and his reputation and his dignity. But in that moment, all that pressure of being a synagogue ruler and having to draw the lines, it disappears. Because Jairus now is just a dad, and his daughter is dying, and he doesn't care what anybody thinks. There's only one person that can help. Pride is often our biggest obstacle to faith. We care about appearances. We don't want to look weak. We hide behind competence. And maybe that was part of what was going on with Jairus. But what changed for him? Desperation. Let's take a minute. Put yourself in Jairus' shoes. There was no more time for a show. There was no more time for religious pretense. There was no space for bravado. He didn't have any options left. Either swallow your pride and go to Jesus, or stand by as your daughter dies. Which is, I think, just the nature of fatherhood and leadership. I think fatherhood and leadership come down to one thing ultimately, which is being helpless and falling down before the one who can help. Luke says she was an only daughter, about 12 years of age. One child, only daughter, 12 years old. Just at 12 years old, stepping into womanhood. Means this is a little girl with a personality, with memories, with inside jokes with dad. He's watched her learn how to crawl, to walk, and to talk. And the bond is about as sweet a bond as you can have, right? As sweet of a bond as you have with your baby or with your toddler, super sweet. This is a bond that has been built on and deepened over 12 years now. Wherever you're at with your kids, it's the choice that you have. You bond with them young and early, and you build on it so that when they hit the teen years, it's sweet. Or you let it slip through your fingers, and then they end up having to look elsewhere for that bond with their peers, with their friends, with their schools, with their teachers, with their social media feeds. Because they need that. They need that bond. They need that connection. Jairus has it. Now this little girl is old enough that he can picture her future, marriage, grandchildren, a life unfolding. He didn't let it slip through his fingers, but now it's being ripped out of his hand. If you're a father, you can feel that, right? Dads, we don't sit still when our daughters hurt. Jairus doesn't delegate this to a servant. He doesn't send his wife. He doesn't wait for Jesus to come around. He runs to Jesus himself, falls on his face before Jesus in front of a crowd and begs, throws himself down. Nothing else matters. Some of you love your daughters like this, right? Some of you haven't, and you are tempted to believe it's too late, and you're filled with regret. Some of you never had a father who loved you like that, and you're still aching from that hole. This is what fatherhood's meant to look like. A desperate love that will risk dignity and reputation and comfort to bring your children to Jesus. Jairus is doing something here that we ought to be doing for our children before they're ever born. It's called intercession. It's when you carry somebody else to Jesus. It's prayer. It's not flowery words. It's dragging your people, the people you love, to the feet of Jesus, to the feet of the only one who can help. Jairus doesn't come with arguments. He doesn't come with credentials. He doesn't bring solutions. He just comes with a need. My daughter is dying. Please come help. That's it. And that's intercession. And fathers, that's your calling. You may not know all the theology, but you don't have to. You may not be eloquent in prayer. You don't have to. You can do this. You can fall at Jesus' feet and beg for your children. You can fall at Jesus' feet and beg Jesus to come to your house. Do you pray like this? Do you kneel before Jesus for your kids or for your wife or for our church? I know you don't know this, but I often, when I get here, I go back and I will sit back there and I will pray for you guys before I ever come up to preach. I didn't get to do that today because we had a meeting. But I pray for you by name. We have to carry each other to Jesus. And I want to press this especially on the men because it's easy to outsource this sort of thing. We'll work, we'll provide, we'll coach baseball, we'll fix a car, but we won't pray with and for our kids. We'll go to the doctor, we'll go get the doctor, we'll go get the coach, we'll sign up for lessons, we'll get the tutor that we need, but will we get Jesus for our kids? Real leadership doesn't mean you always know the answer. It means you know where to go when you don't. Jairus does what a father should do. He runs through the crowd, he falls down, and he begs Jesus to come with him. And that's your first calling, to be the man who brings Jesus into your house. To be the one who says, family, we're going to pray together tonight. To be the one who opens the Bible, to be the one who kneels at the foot of the bed. And it can feel like weakness because it can be uncomfortable. It can feel awkward. But putting yourself in uncomfortable places for the people you love is not weakness. It's the definition of strength. That's fatherhood. Real weakness is protecting the image of strength. Weakness is saying, I need to project that I've got it all together. That's pride. That's weakness. Real weakness is having the faith to put yourself in uncomfortable and awkward situations because it's what your people need. Okay, so I say that, and I know that it lands heavy for some of you. Some of you, it lands heavy because you've prayed, you've interceded, you've begged, you've done all of those things, and your child didn't get better. Or your marriage didn't survive, or your loved one died anyway. You feel the ache of Jairus coming and falling down at Jesus' feet, but not the joy of how the story ends for him. So, did you fail? Or did Jesus fail you? Jesus doesn't measure you by the results. He measures you by your faith. Jairus didn't heal his daughter. Jairus couldn't do it. Jairus did what Jairus could do. He ran and fell on his knees at Jesus' feet. Faith isn't fixing all the things. It's not fixing all the things. You can't do it. Faith is coming to Jesus. And sometimes Jesus answers like he did for Jairus. Sometimes he answers in ways we won't see until eternity, in ways we don't understand. Sometimes the answer is no. But whatever his answer is, he doesn't waste desperate faith. He works through it. Geneva was in the hospital. Every monitor beep felt like a countdown. Couldn't fix her, couldn't diagnose her, couldn't make the lungs clear. Call and talk to friends who are doctors. Had one of my best friends come and go over her chart. Best I could do. Outside of praying and pleading. Some of you have been there. I've been with some of you in the NICU. What that does is it forces you to realize that fatherhood, again, is mostly just helplessness and intercession. You can't save your kids. You can only run to the one who can. For us with Geneva, when Jesus finally did answer, when they figured out it was an antibiotic, the relief came quickly. But what mattered most wasn't just the answer. That I don't think was the point. It was the place that it put us. It put us on our knees, desperate, learning all over again that my family's hope is not me. My daughter's hope can't be me, ultimately. When we're kids, we look to our dads to be strong for us. We can only be so strong. We have to teach them to hope in Jesus. We have to hope for them in Jesus. So here's Jairus. He's kneeling in the dirt. His reputation is shattered. His voice, he's just begging Jesus to come. So Jesus agrees, because this is what Jesus does. 30 sermons in on Luke. Have we ever seen Jesus say no? Has he ever said, nope, not today? Somebody comes in front of Jesus with a plea. Has he ever turned away yet? Not yet. It's not going to happen. Jesus comes. He agrees to come. But then when it seems like things are moving forward, this whole parade screeches to a halt because somebody else in the crowd reaches out and steps in the middle. So this is what happens next. There was a woman who had had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately her discharge of blood ceased. And Jesus said, "Who was it that touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds are surrounding you and are pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Okay, so painful detail. 12 years. 12 years. That's the entire lifetime of Jairus' daughter. It's not a coincidence. As long as that little girl's been alive, this woman has been bleeding. One life just beginning to bloom, another life draining away. Her condition was likely a uterine hemorrhage, constant menstrual flow. It's not just uncomfortable, right? It's exhausting, rob you of your energy and your strength and your dignity. And it came with spiritual stigma. According to Leviticus 15, her bleeding made her ritually unclean. Which meant she was unclean for a period of 12 years. She couldn't enter the synagogue. She couldn't join in worship. She couldn't share a meal without making everybody else around her unclean. She couldn't be touched without transferring her defilement to other people for 12 years. For 12 years, then, she's been isolated. For 12 years, she's been without an embrace, without a hand on her shoulder. For 12 years, she's been without being in the congregation of God's people. She has been alone. Some of you know the pain of physical illness, and some of you know the pain of loneliness, and she had both. So Luke, the doctor, adds, she had spent all her living on physicians and could not be healed by anyone. She tried everything. Every treatment, every doctor, every alternative, and she didn't just fail. She went broke in the process. She's not only sick, she's poor, destitute. That's what long-term suffering does. It strips you of your health and then your money and then your relationships and finally of your hope. She had nothing left. Some of you have been there, drained savings accounts and maxed out credit cards and watched bills pile up while condition doesn't improve. And then it's not just physical pain, it's spiritual and emotional and financial collapse. She hears that Jesus is in town. She knows she's not supposed to be in the crowd. She's not supposed to be there. She knows she risks shaming him by touching him, but desperation wins. She pushes through the crowd. You can picture her ducking in, doing what it takes to get there. And she reaches for him. Not for his hand, not for his face, just the edge of his garment. It's faith. It's not loud. It's not polished. It's not articulate. It's just faith. A reach. If I can just touch the edge of his robe, I'll be healed. And when she does, in that instant, 12 years of bleeding stops, and strength surges back into her body, and she knows it. She knows it right away. Her body tells her. Now, Jesus is on the way to Jairus' house, and every second counts because his little girl's dying, right? Jairus is walking with them. Put yourself in Jairus' shoes. We're walking. The girl's dying. We've got to get it. He came running. He fell at Jesus' feet. Come quickly. My daughter's dying. And then Jesus stops and he freezes. And he starts asking who touched me. You put yourself in Jairus' shoes for a second. Peter's there. He's rolling his eyes. He's like, in the middle of a crowd. Everybody's touching you. And Jesus says, no. Not like that. Somebody touched me. Power went out from me. Why does he stop? Well, this woman had more than a physical problem, and she needed more than relief of her symptoms. What she actually needed was restoration and dignity and to be seen and named and welcomed back into the family. Jesus is never content with anonymous healing. He wants a face-to-face encounter with people. And so this woman, here she is. She realizes she's been caught. She can't hide anymore. She comes, falls at his feet, and she blurts out everything. Her condition, her shame, her touch, her healing. It's a very vulnerable confession because what she's confessing is that she just defiled everybody, including Jesus. For 12 years, her identity had been unclean. And so she could be shamed, she could be rebuked, scolded, rejected. Like she did a bad thing. At least that's how she's tempted to feel. And so the next words matter. So what are the next words? Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Jairus has a daughter. She's about to die. This woman, though, has no Jairus. She has no father interceding for her. She's alone. She has nobody. She has nothing. She has no people. She has no one to intercede for her or plead her case. She has to fight through the crowd herself. Vulnerable, isolated, and alone. And so what does Jesus do? He does not simply heal her, he steps into the void. He takes the role of father that she never had. He says, daughter. The only person in Scripture that Jesus calls that is this woman. In Christ, the fatherless get a father, and the shamed get dignity. The unclean get to be clean. Jesus doesn't just fix her body. He restores her soul, her identity. Now, there's a doctrine that this is connected to. Let the inner theology nerd run for just a little bit here. What happened here is called expiation. Expiation means cleansing. Forgiveness deals with guilt. Expiation deals with defilement. It washes you. Sin makes us guilty before God, but it also makes us dirty. It makes us feel dirty. It's not just I broke the rules, but it's I am now ruined. I am filthy. I am unworthy. I am unclean. Victims of abuse know this feeling. People trapped in sexual sin know this feeling. People carrying shame from decades ago, they know that feeling. Defilement can come from your own sin, and it can come from the sins of others against you. And when you're defiled, you don't just need pardon. What you need is cleansing. That's what this woman experiences. She touches Jesus, and instead of making him unclean, he makes her clean. Her filth doesn't stain him. His holiness restores her. And that's the cross. On the cross, Jesus does not simply bear the guilt and weight of our sin. He becomes our scapegoat. He carries our filth outside the camp. He becomes our substitute. He dies in our place for our sin, and in him we're not only forgiven, we're cleansed. 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Now, some of you have been living in this woman's shoes, and you've been bleeding in secret, and you're convinced that you've gone too far, and you're too dirty, and you're too unworthy to step forward, and you've been hiding in the crowd hoping for an anonymous touch. And the reality is Jesus is not content to heal you in secret. He wants to restore you in public. He wants to give you a new name, a new dignity, and a new family. So he's calling you out to come. Tell him everything. Tell him the truth so that you can hear him say, daughter, son, your faith has made you well. While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be well." Okay, so all this scene has been happening. We've just been waiting. Who touched me? What's going on? Oh, I fought through the crowd. I touched you. I made you unclean. Oh, it's okay. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Meanwhile, time has been ticking. And Jairus' daughter is now dead. He's risked everything. He's risked his reputation, his dignity to plead with Jesus. Jesus says yes. Jesus is walking towards his house. Hope is rising in him. And then you get this interruption and this delay and this detour. And while Jesus is still talking to the woman, the news comes. She's dead. It's too late. Don't bother the teacher anymore. It's over. Now, be honest, dads. If you're Jairus, how you feel? Anybody pretty angry? Anybody? Who are you angry with? The woman? Oh, your little bleeding problem while my daughter died? How about Jesus? Angry? Why did you stop? You knew. Now she's dead. You stopped. This is where many of us stumble in faith. It's not just the pain of suffering, it's the pain of delay. It feels often like Jesus stops for other people with smaller problems, while our prayers go unanswered. Have you ever felt that way? Like he cared about her small need. That was a big need, right? 12 years of bleeding is not actually a small thing, but it is next to death of a little girl. You ever been at a prayer group and had somebody celebrate an answered prayer that just felt silly and small? Like, I lost my keys and I prayed and then I found them right away. They were in my pocket the whole time, right? And you're carrying this weight of unanswered prayer. And there's part of you that's like, God doesn't actually care about the keys. And there's a part of you that's like, yeah, he cares about your keys, but what about this? The tension between what God's doing for other people and what he seems to not be doing for you, if you let it get to you, it can shred your faith. And sometimes it can look like Jesus is too late or like he cares about the wrong things. But that's not the reality. And to that grief and anger, Jesus speaks a sentence that changes everything. He says, "Do not fear, only believe." He's not scolding. He's not spouting off a cliche. He's handing a lifeline. Jairus doesn't need a lecture in theology, but he does need a command that cuts through the fog that he's walking through. Don't fear. Do believe. Jesus names the enemy, which is fear. Fear is the opposite of faith. Fear says it's too late, God can't, God won't. Fear will paralyze you, it will shut down hope. And then he calls for trust. He commands it. Only believe. Believe what? Believe me. Not the circumstances, not the statistics, just me. Believe Jesus. Faith isn't denying reality, it's clinging to Jesus in the middle of it. The girl is dead. The greater reality is that Jesus is Lord over death. Both stories come down to this battle between fear and faith. The woman chose faith. She reached out instead of hiding. Jesus says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." Now Jairus has a choice. Choose fear, choose faith. Jesus says, "Do not fear, only believe." Every crisis boils down to that same fork in the road. Will I give in to fear or will I cling to faith? And faith is not pretending you're not afraid. Faith is not pretending you're not grieved or in pain. Faith is handing your fear to Jesus and saying, "I don't know how, I don't know when, I am not in control, I don't know what you're going to do, but I trust you. Parents, some of you may be walking through hell with your kids. If you haven't, maybe someday you will. If and when that happens, I want you to hold on to that. It may be physical illness, it may be depression, it may be rebellion, it may be a prodigal child who's gone cold to Jesus. And every temptation will feel like it's too late. Stop bothering. Jesus says, do not fear, only believe. You need to keep bringing your kids to Jesus and praying and kneeling and trusting that he's not done until he's done. And then when he's done, you put your hand over your mouth and you say, God's will be done. The Lord is given, the Lord is taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But until then, you do not fear. You believe. It's our job to speak this word to each other because fear gets loud, and when it does, we need brothers who say, don't fear, believe. So the messenger comes and says, give up hope. It's done. It's over. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Jesus says, don't fear, believe. The same two voices you hear in every crisis, one saying, it's over, stop praying, stop hoping, stop caring, stop trusting. The other says, I'm not finished. Keep believing, I'm working through this. So the stage is set. Jairus has a choice. Listen to the messenger or listen to Jesus. Give in to fear or cling to faith. So they keep walking to the house. When he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James and the father and mother of the child. All were weeping and mourning for her, but he said, do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping. And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, child, arise. And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. And he directed that something should be given her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened. So they arrive at the house. The wails have already started. It would have been loud and visceral. They're not Midwestern Hoosiers. They don't mourn in quiet. It's not the culture. The air would have been full of grief, and at the center of it all would have been a lifeless little girl lying on her bed. The smell of death is in the house. The sound of sorrow is everywhere. Jairus' wife is probably still there by the bed. Jairus is there in the doorway. He wasn't there for her last breath. He wasn't there to say goodbye. He was too busy trying. Did he do the wrong thing? Should he have just been there for her in that moment? That kind of regret's heavy. Jesus walks right into it. And I want to stop and say something right here, because some of you have been through hell with your kids, and what I want to say to you is this. I don't know if you've noticed it as we have studied Luke, but Jesus hates death. Have you seen it? He hates death. He hates death. He hates it. He hates the works of the devil, and he loves the little children. He hates death, and he loves your children better than you do. So you watch what he does. He doesn't let the whole crowd in, just Peter, James, and John and the parents. It's not for spectators. This is not a show. Keeps his inner circle in. They're being trained, not just by his teaching, but by his presence in those moments, those hard moments of life and death. Make sure the parents are in the room too. And he says something so audacious that it makes them laugh. Do not weep, for she's not dead but sleeping. They laugh, scoffing laughter, bitter laughter, incredulous laughter. Everybody knows a corpse when they've seen one. Death is obvious, it is final, it is undeniable, and yet Jesus speaks a greater reality. She's only sleeping. The Bible often uses sleep as a metaphor for death, not because death isn't real, but because it's not final. For the believer, death is as temporary and reversible as an afternoon nap. It's hard to feel that way, but it's the truth. And when Jesus is present, death has lost its sting. Tim, waking a dead child is no harder than a parent nudging their kid awake from a nap. That's the authority that he has. Our greatest enemy is nothing to him. So then what does he do? He takes her hand, he calls, saying, "Child, arise." Doesn't stand across the room, doesn't issue a command, doesn't wave his hands or speak in riddles. He goes to the bedside, he takes her hand in his. Jairus had held that hand countless times. Jesus takes her hand and he fills it with life again. Death retreats at his touch. Nothing can stop Jesus. Nothing. Not the wind, not the waves, not the demons, not sickness, not uncleanness, and not death. His cleanness, his holiness always overcomes what is unclean. His life always overcomes death. Death runs. The first touch she feels after death is Jesus' touch. The first voice she hears is Jesus, and the first face she sees when she opens her eyes is Jesus' face. One day you will close your eyes in death. And when you open them, the first face you see will be his, and the first voice you hear will be his, and the first touch you feel will be his. For the Christian, death is not the end. It's sleep. And Jesus is the one who wakes you. And then he directs that she should be given something to eat. In other words, we're good here. This isn't just a medical procedure. She's not a ghost. She's a girl. She's probably hungry. Get her some food. So what does all this story mean for us? For those of us who are grieving, what it means is that Jesus walks into the house of mourning with us, and he's not distant, and he's not afraid of your tears. And he can speak life where there's only death. For those who doubt, when Jesus speaks of death as sleep and people laugh, it's the same. Our culture mocks the idea of resurrection, but Jesus isn't joking. He's showing us what's to come. The promise for all of those we love who have fallen asleep in him. It's a promise. It's a promise. You've lost people you love. If they know him, they will rise. They will wake. Sometimes ministry means stepping into places like this where there are rooms with grief and tears. Sometimes loving the people close to you means that. Don't shrink back. Don't hide behind cliches. Don't heal wounds lightly. But be steady and strong and bring hope. So then here's Jairus. He ran, he begged, he waited, he feared, he despaired. And now Jesus takes his daughter's hand and gives her back to him alive. Again, you can't protect your kids from everything. So what can you do? You bring them to Jesus. You trust him to do what you can't. So the house of mourning is transformed into a house of joy and laughter. A dead girl gets to eat dinner. A broken father and mother get to hold their daughter again. And Jesus says, don't tell anybody yet. Luke doesn't give us these stories separately. He weaves them together because the truth is bigger than any story alone. We have 12 years of bleeding. We have 12 years of living. We have one woman losing life as long as the other has had it. We have an untouchable woman and a lifeless child. We have a woman excluded from the community of God's people and another separated by death itself. 2 daughters. One he names daughter, the other he calls child. Both hopeless, both beyond human help, both rescued. And that's not just their story, it's ours. We're the woman. Sin has left us defiled and unclean. Shame clings to us. And everything we try, self-help, moral effort, religion doesn't work. We need to be cleansed. We're the girl. Sin doesn't just make us dirty, it makes us dead. You were dead in your trespasses and sins. Dead people can't fix themselves. We need life. That's the gospel. In Jesus, the unclean are cleansed and the dead are raised. On the cross, Jesus himself bled. The clean one became unclean. The one who could not be touched stretched out his hands and took the nails. The one who was pure became defiled for us. Isaiah says, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. He took our uncleanness and he absorbed our filth, and he became the scapegoat driven outside the camp, carrying our shame. So that when we reach for him, even trembling and hiding, he doesn't recoil. He embraces us as daughters and sons. On the cross, he didn't just bleed, he died. His mother wept, his friends mourned. He was laid in a tomb, but death couldn't hold him. On the third day, he rose again. The Father spoke the words, Son, arise, and his spirit returned and his eyes opened and his body was raised in glory. And because he rose, we will rise along with everyone we love who have died in him, who are asleep. Paul says it plainly, for as in Adam all die, so also in Christ shall all be made alive. So the question is, what are you going to do? Passage, the story is about faith versus fear. The woman could have stayed hidden, afraid of shame. Instead, she reached out in faith. Jairus could have collapsed in despair. Instead, he walked home with Jesus in faith. You can listen to the voice of fear. Don't bother, it's too late. Or you can listen to Jesus. Do not fear, only believe. Faith isn't about having no fear. It's about clinging to Jesus in spite of it. It's not about confidence in yourself. It's about being desperate enough to come to him. So where are you in the story? If you're the woman bleeding in shame, you reach out. You tell Jesus everything. If you're Jairus, desperate for somebody you love, you fall at his feet and you keep believing. If you're the girl spiritually dead, you hear his voice even now. Child, arise.